In Kiev, there continues to be fierce fighting. Ukrainian forces are battling to keep the Russians from encircling the city. The vast armed convoy approaching Kyiv from the north still seems to be largely stalled. Clovis Casali and Robert Parsons report.
Beyond the outskirts of Kiev, roadblocks everywhere. Even deep in the countryside, local farmers stand guard with nothing but their hunting rifles. Many civilians are fleeing the capital, but Ukrainian troops are moving to strengthen their front. A brief stop to fill up with petrol before heading off to reconnoiter Russian positions.
The Russians thought it would be easy, like when they seized Crimea. They could occupy our Ukrainian soil without firing a shot. But that's not how it's working out. I'd like to tell the Russian soldiers, come here, guys, and you'll see what kind of a reception you'll get.
30 kilometers outside Kiev, where Russian tanks have yet to reach, Sergei is spending the night in a hotel. He's decided to return to Kiev despite the bombardment. Not easy to explain his decision to his parents.
Why Putin do this? Why he made all mothers of Ukraine crying? We had a conversation today with her, and he understands me that I want to stay there because so much people go away, and she told me that some people must stay and defend city.
Sergei is an engineer, but focused now on helping the defense as best he can.
In my opinion, I haven't tried to kill another man, but if it will be need in future, if Russians really comes and take Kyiv, I don't know what I can to do. We another nation, we another people in our mind, in our soul. Don't touch us, please.
Up at the crack of dawn to go back to Kiev. He and his friends plan to take food and medicines to the frontline troops.
My friend who must take me from this place not answered on my call. I don't know what can happen with him. Maybe he's dead because he is from territorial defense of this city. Everything can happen. I will go by my legs to Kiev.
He leaves alone, trying to hitch a lift back to a city under siege. Like so many Ukrainian civilians who have been thrust into this war, he's ready to pay any price to defend his country.
Well, more than 1.2 million people, predominantly elderly, women and children, have flooded into neighboring countries. Roughly 145,000 fled to Hungary, an additional 100,000 were in Moldova, and more than 90,000 in Slovakia. The vast majority, though, in neighboring Poland. 650,000 people, long lines of queues, kilometers long, to get into the country. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Poland and pledged more aid to help with the impending refugee crisis. Take a listen.
The Biden administration just requested to Congress $2.75 billion in humanitarian assistance. That's both to meet the need of vulnerable people and communities inside Ukraine, as well as to support refugee services, including here in Poland. That's in addition to the more than $54 million in humanitarian assistance to Ukraine that we announced just last week.
A vast exodus, and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a statement to the refugees, one of comprehension that they're leaving to save their lives, but also a message of hope that soon, maybe one day, they could return to their homeland.
I'm sure we'll soon be able to say, come back from Poland, Romania, Slovakia and other countries. You can come back because there's no longer a threat. We're thinking about a future for Ukrainians at the end of the war, how to revive our cities and our economies.
On Monday, the UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting on the humanitarian crisis and discuss a possible draft resolution. Most recently, the council met on Friday to discuss the nuclear plant Zaporizhia, which was hit by a Russian assault. There was international condemnation of Russia after that attack. Jessica Lemazurier reports from New York.
Russia faced criticism yet again here at the United Nations on Friday. The US and its allies reprimanded Russia over its shelling and seizure of Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, with the British ambassador telling Moscow not to let such an attack happen again. Other council members expressed shock and grave concern. They also said that the attack was illegal, a violation of international law and of the Geneva Convention, but not one of them explicitly accused Russia of committing a war crime. The world narrowly averted a nuclear catastrophe last night, the US Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield told the Council, and she said that the attack was incredibly reckless and dangerous. International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi briefed the Council from an airplane, and he said that although from a technical point of view the operation of the plant continues normally, there's no normalcy about this situation, and he offered to travel to Ukraine to assess the situation on that nuclear plant. Ukraine's ambassador appeared frustrated and said that it's not only Ukraine under Russian attack, it's Europe, it's the entire world, it's humanity. He called for a no-fly zone over Ukraine to protect the civilian population, but Western powers have really made it clear that that's not an option right now, because it could bring them into direct conflict with Russia. Russia's UN envoy Vasily Nebenzia argued that everyone else was lying about what happened at the nuclear plant and that actually it was sabotaged by Ukrainian radicals. He reassured everyone that it's now under Russian military control and said that Ukraine was being hysterical. France and Mexico are still working on a UN resolution that will address the humanitarian impact of Russia's invasion. They hope that that will be put to a vote here in the Security Council next week.
And in Russia, Vladimir Putin has tightened control over information about the war in Ukraine. Some social media have been restricted, and foreign media, France 24 included, have had to stop broadcasting or reporting from the country. That after a new law was enacted that said anyone spreading false information about the war could be sent to prison for 15 years. Of course, the Kremlin choosing what it calls false information. For more, we can speak to our Moscow bureau chief, Elena Valencina. Hello, Elena. Don't know if I should call you current bureau chief, former bureau chief, but the point is you're here in Paris talking to us now. Give us more on that. What's the situation with the press, with dissent, freedom of speech in the country? What is it like to be a journalist in Russia?
The situation is that if you would have been in Russia now and you would have given this lead talking about war, you could be sentenced directly for 15 years in jail, because Russian authorities have forbidden to use even until the word war to qualify what's happening in Ukraine, with this new law on fake news that has been adopted yesterday by Russian state. So it's not only about judging what is fake news or not from the Kremlin. It's also about when you speak about the Russian army, you must not put a discredit on the peacekeeping operation that they are spreading. So this is the official version of the event that the Russian state is vehiculating, and the media are supposed to give only this version, to give only Russian sources, which you understand makes it completely impossible to make any objective, real reporting, real publishing in Russia now.
This is where we hear the denazification of Ukraine.
Exactly. You are supposed to speak about special operations, denazification, Ukraine attacking Russia. I mean, all this parallel illusionary storytelling that Kremlin is building now in Russia. And if you don't, so you now risk heavy prison sentences. So that leads media to close, to shut down, to leave Russia, and so on. And I think that now we are heading to some informational vacuum and close up, and people will not have access anymore to any Russian-speaking reliable sources of information. Furthermore, Russian state also shut down Facebook and Twitter yesterday.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin in power 20 years. You've been based in Moscow for a decade.
Halfway.
Have you seen something like this to this extent before?
No, this is unprecedented. I mean, there were, of course, the situation with freedom of speech and expression, of press, were far from being ideal in Russia. It was very, very hard. For example, the web television Dozh TV Rain, who has had to shut down a few days ago. Before that, they were broadcast on TV, and a few years ago, they had to go on internet. They could not broadcast on TV anymore. You would have journalists being prosecuted. The law on fake news was already adopted in 2019. It was targeting the publications about the COVID-19 and all what you would say about the fail of the Russian state to fight with COVID-19, but you would risk only fines and not jail sentences. So you see the evolution of this logic. But now, so the freedom of expression was very short already, but now we are in war times, and it's what we see today is almost the martial law has not been physically adopted, but the situation and with the closing of the country, with the shutting down of the free press, it's equivalent to some like war state where you would have no press, no message, and nothing but the official version of it.
Yeah, on that note, as you say, no martial law, but some of the people are wondering if that's coming. What is daily life like at the moment for an ordinary person in Russia?
Well, now people are very anxious about what's happening. According to an official poll, Vladimir Putin has still 70% of confidence from the people. So I think this is the effect of state propaganda, which is very, very heavy on war times. But at the meantime, when you speak to people in the streets, and my colleague was just saying me so that a lot of people were and especially young people were saying don't abandon us, don't leave us, and we are afraid of what's going on because people see that the country is closing, the international flights are cancelled.
And would these people mainly be in the cities, the sort of educated elite, or?
Yes. It was mainly about. Now we are speaking about people that we heard in Moscow, and in this city for the past 30 years now they are living in a consumer society, a very Western-like society model. It's a very modern city that lives 20 round the clock, and so people were used to this way of life. You don't tackle politics, you can just live like in any Western country in the big cities in Russia. So these people who are also maybe traveling abroad, etc., they don't want to be behind the Iron Curtain anymore, and so now people are really anxious. People are trying to leave, and we see again that international flights are being cancelled, and we see on social media and when we speak to people, we know that a lot of people just want to live anywhere but not to stay in a country which is like a Soviet-like country, like their grandparents were living 50 or 60 years ago.
Yeah, very troubling history appearing to possibly be repeating itself. Thank you very much, Elena. Moscow Bureau Chief Elena Volocine. Well, the war also looming large over next month's presidential election in France. Already, Emmanuel Macron had to cancel a glitzy first rally in Marseille. The incumbent releasing his first campaign video, a new one coming out each Friday, shot as a sort of mini-series. Macron waited until the last possible day to declare he'll seek a second 5-year term. Polls show he is a front-runner, and his biggest challenge expected to come from Marine Le Pen on the far right. But with war returning to Europe, there are questions over the logistical challenges of holding an election. For more, let's speak to Paul Smith, head of the French department at the University of Nottingham. Thank you for speaking to France 24, Professor. This is already turning out to be one of France's shortest and strangest election campaigns in modern times. Just about 5 weeks of the full cast of candidates. What do you make of it so far?
Well, we knew that Macron was going to hold on until the last moment. He was anticipating, of course, building his campaign around his management of the pandemic, not on his management of a war in Europe. But this was on the cards that he would wait and then go as late as he possibly could, rather like de Gaulle in 1965, who only announced formally that he was a candidate a month before the election. But, we've known for a long time that he was going to be running.
Yeah, and there's been already some discussion that perhaps this war is in the favor of Emmanuel Macron, given his position and some of the sort of questionable ties to Russia that his biggest rivals have.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've already seen it, in fact, almost from the moment that Putin announced the invasion. Already Macron's scores were rising, and we've seen it, as you said earlier, the scores this week are rising up